بسم الله أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه من والاه الحمد لله. ومنها أن يكون أكثر اهتمامه بعلم الباطن ومراقبة القلب ومعرفة طريق الآخرة وسلوكه وصدق الرجاء في انكشاف ذلك. So he says amongst the signs of the scholars of the next world is that they're more concerned about inward knowledge and about being vigilant about the states of the heart and knowing the path to the akhirah and the wayfaring and having sincere hope in that being unveiled to them. من المجاهدة والمراقبة. So mujahada is struggling with yourself. Muraqaba is guarding your states. It's being vigilant about the state that you're in. So the muraqib is the one who's aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet ﷺ, when he was asked, Jibreel asked him about أخبرني عن الإحسان. He said, أن تعبد الله كأنك تراه فإن لم تكن تراه فإنه يراك. That you worship Allah as if you see Him, and if you don't see Him, at least you know He sees you. So these are the two states of muraqabah. The first is the highest, which is you worship Allah as if you're in a state of mushahada. But if you're not in the witnessing, then at least you know that Allah is witnessing you. So these are the two states. And it's a high station, and the practice of muraqabah, the best thing to do is to have a practice that you're consistent with. So you do you take a wird in the morning and in the evening. Do the Quranic wird, which is like Yasin in the morning. You do the Waqi'ah and Mulk. And then you can add to those like Alif Lam Mim Sajda also at the end of the day. And then you can do Dukhan, Hamim Dukhan. And then you can add to that. The best thing to do is try to do a khatam of Quran every month. At least do it twice a year. Abu Hanifa said if you do it less than twice a year, then you're actually stinting on the haqq of the Quran. And you're from the people that اتخذوا القرآن مهجورا, that they abandon the Quran. So it's important to do it once during Ramadan at least, and then once throughout the rest of the year. But to have a wird from the Quran is important, to do something from the Quran. Also trying to memorize the Quran, taking some verses and memorizing them that you could pray with. And then having the adhkar in the morning and the evening. The wird al-latif is a good wird. It's an over-the-counter wird. It's not, you don't have to get a prescription for that one. They're specific to certain people. The 99 names, you shouldn't do any of the names like over and over again, because the names have khasiyah, and they can actually be dangerous for people if they're doing the names over and over again, because their tajalliyat can come from a lot of repetition. So you can have things happen that you're really not ready for, something like that. So that's something that you have to be aware of. But doing the 99 names is good. Knowing the names, inna lillahi tis'an wa tis'ina isman man ahsaha dakhala al-jannah. Allah has 99 names. Whoever knows them will enter paradise. And so it's good. Fattah is a good name when you need help in something. Basit, when you're feeling depressed. Ya Basitu, Ya Basitu. So that's important. And then he says that with mujahada, it leads to mushahada. So when الَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا اللهم مع المحسنين. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says at the end of Ankabut, and this is a surah Makkiyah. So this is not the jihad of Medina. This is the Meccan jihad, which is jihad of the nafs, which precedes the outward jihad. If you don't do jihad of the nafs, it's dangerous to do the outward jihad, because you end up doing what these people that haven't done jihad of their nafs do, which is endangering your faith, inwardly and outwardly. So that's the mujahada that leads to ihtida, that tahtadi. So Allah will actually guide you to His subul, His ways. And that's the mukashafa that He's talking about. And this is daqaiq al-ulum, subtle knowledges that come into the heart. And تتفجر بها ينابيع الحكمة من القلب. Wisdom begins to emerge from the heart. And then he says, one of the things that he says that Sayyidina Ali said in a long hadith, al-qulub aw'iya, that the hearts are vessels, وَخَيْرُهَا أَوْعَاهَا, and the best of them are the ones that hold the most. And people are three: alimun rabbani, a scholar who elevates and raises people with sound tarbiyah Muhammadiyah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. وَمُتَعَلِّمٌ عَلَى سَبِيلِ النَّجَاةِ, and then a student, so a scholar who is not just teaching outwardly but also has an inward state. And then a learner who's on the path of salvation. And then he said, hamajun ra'a'un atba'u kulli na'iq. And then you have the hamaj. In Arabic, hamaj are like insects, but they're used to mean just people that have no education, no training, no adab. They're just like hamaj. And then ra'a are like the rabble, we would say in English, the riffraff and the rabble. So he said, if you're not a scholar, or at least a learner on the road to salvation, then you're from the riffraff. And then he says, atba'u kulli na'iq. They'll follow anybody that just shouts out. So they're people that don't have discernment, and they end up just following anybody who comes along. Yamiluna ma'a kulli rih. They incline towards every wind, so they're just blown around like feathers, because they're light. And then he said, لم يستضيئوا بنور العلم. They're not guided by the light of knowledge. ولم يلجأوا إلى ركن وثيق. They don't depend on something firm. And knowledge is better than wealth. Knowledge guards you, and you have to guard wealth. Knowledge increases as you expend it. Wealth diminishes as you expend it. The love of the scholar is a religion that we should practice. So dinun yudanu bihi. So it's actually a practice that we should do, just loving scholars. تُكْتَسِبْ بِهِ الطَّاعَةُ فِي حَيَاتِهِ وَالْجَمِيلُ الْأُحْدُوثَةِ بَعْدَ مَوْتِهِ الْعِلْمُ حَاكِمٌ وَالْمَالُ مَحْكُومٌ عَلَيْهِ. And so that through the scholar, obedience is acquired in this life, and also you leave behind good memories. People have good memories of you after you're dead. And then knowledge is a ruler, and wealth, you have to rule over it. And then he said the benefit of wealth goes when it goes. But the ulama, they stay. As long as time is here, knowledge is benefited. ثُمَّ تَنَفَّسَ الصُّعَدَاء. Like Sheikh Salih was saying, one of the girls is going to be studying with somebody I mentioned to him in Istanbul, and he said, oh, that's my student. So through him, you'll become my student. Because the student of a student is a student in that lineage, that we're people of isnad. We believe in the silsila, that there's links in this chain, living links, and those chains of the past are still there, right? You know what a flake is? Do you use that word in England? Who's from England? Do you use that word? Flake? Yeah. What is it in Australia?
Someone you can't really rely on.
You can't rely on them. Exactly. That's a flake. Flaky people. In California, they say it's flaky. A flake is actually, flaking the chain was something sailors did. So before they set sail, they would take the chains and hit them with a hammer, because they oxidize, out in the salt water. So you can have a weak link. And so the flaking was to make sure that the chain was strong so it wouldn't break on the journey. And so that's the importance of being in a strong chain, is that the links are strong. And obviously, unfortunately, as time passes, the links get weaker. Just like a photocopy, each copy gets less and less. But you're still, to be in those chains is a blessing. Like for instance, my I have isnad back to Imam al-Ghazali through Sheikh Abdullah, through Sheikh Muhammad al-Aqubi, through Sheikh Ahmed Jabir, and through others. So it's a link back to the Imam. So each one studied with them, and then they gave permission to teach it. And there's a blessing in that, because there's a secret in that tradition. And so then, تنفس su'ada. Imam Ali, you can imagine this is in the riwayah. It said, تنفس su'ada. He heaved a heavy sigh. Ha. And then he said, ha. Like the Arabs say that, like, إنها هنا علما جما لو وجدت له حملا. There's so much knowledge in here. If I could only find people that could carry it. بل أجد طالبا غير مأمون يستعمر آلة الدين في طلب الدنيا. This is Imam Ali complaining. I see seekers that aren't trustworthy. They're looking to use the religion as a tool to get dunya. ويستطير بنعم الله على أوليائه ويستظهر بحججه على خلقه ومنقادا لأهل الحق أو منقادا لأهل. So they're using it just to elevate themselves over others. لكن ينزرع الشك في قلبه بأوي عرض من شبهة. But doubt comes to their hearts for the first difficult obfuscation that comes along. لا بصيرة له لا ذا ولا ذاك أو منهوما باللذات سريس القياد في طلب الشهوات. Or they're just completely immersed in pleasures, incontinent, salis al-qiyad, incontinent in seeking after their appetites. They can't control themselves, there's no restraint. Allah. He said one majlis of knowledge will make takfir of 70 majlis of entertainment. So it's important to do that. And then he said, this is how knowledge dies. And this is how the earth loses the proofs for God. He said, إِمَّا ظَاهِرٌ مَكْشُوفٌ. Sometimes those proofs are evident and outward, and other times, وَإِمَّا خَائِفٌ مَقْهُورٌ. Or they're hiding, they're afraid to come out. And this is the thing about أَوْجَسَ فِي نَفْسِهِ خِيفَةً. I mean, even Ibrahim alayhi salam had fear. He was taking his hidr. The people from the Kahf, they fled persecution to the cave. This whole idea of going out and just, standing and we're going to get massacred and somehow, where is that? You know, the Prophet ﷺ, when they fled back to Medina, they fled the battlefield when they fought. Khalid came back and he said that we were farun, we fled. And he said, bal karun. No, you came back to fight another day. There's times to withdraw, there's times to fight. And this is one of the secrets of our ummah, is that because it was an ummah based on intelligence, that there were times to do things and times not to do things. And one of the secrets of the early victories of the Muslims was the karfar tactic. In fact, one of the things in Sahih Muslim that Amr, when he, Mustawrid al-Qurashi, when he said in Bab al-Fitan, Mustawrid al-Qurashi, he said, تَقُمَ السَّاعَةُ وَالرَّوْمُ أَكْثَرُ النَّاسِ. The hour won't come until the Europeans are the majority of people. And that's by tashabbuh, by just outward appearance. You're from the people. مَن تَشَبَّهَ بِقَوْمٍ فَهُوَ مِنْهُمْ, the Prophet said. If you look like a people, behave like them, you're one of them. Right? So the Prophet ﷺ predicted that the European culture would be the dominant culture all over the planet. That's a hadith sahih. Amazing. And Amr couldn't believe it. He said, Absir ma taqul. Think about what you're saying. He said, Wallahi sami'tu min Rasulillah. I heard the Prophet say it. He said, Inna fihim la khisalan arba'. They have 4 qualities. And then he said, Ahlamu nas 'inda al-musiba. Or 'inda musibatin. That they're very forbearing when calamities happen. They have a lot of hilm in their nature. And he said, أسرعهم إفاقة بعد أحلم الناس عند فتنة, that they're the most forbearing when you have a fitna, like civil strife and calamity. They show a lot of restraint. And then he said, وَأَسْرَعُهُمْ كَرَّةً بَعْدَ فَرَّ, and they're the quickest to come back after they've fled. They're the quickest to come back after they've been defeated. You look at Germany, amazing, how they came back after World War II. And then he said, أَوْشَكُهُمْ إِفَاقَةً بَعْدَ مُصِيبَةٍ, that they're the quickest to get back on their feet after they have something that afflicts them. And they're the quickest to أسرعهم كرة بعد فرة, that they're the quickest to attack once they've retreated. And then he said, وخيرهم لمسكين وضعيف ويتيم, لمسكين ويتيم وضعيف, and they're the kindest to the orphans and the weak and the handicapped. And then he said, وخامسة حسنة جميلة أمنعهم من ظلم الملوك. They're the ones that stop their rulers from oppressing more than other people. So he noted the good qualities in them. But they're definitely the dominant culture right now. And so people, sometimes you have khayfun maqhur. They withdraw, like the people of the cave. They withdrew from the society. لِأَلَا تَطُّلَ حُجَجُ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى وَبَيِّنَاتُهُ, so that the proofs of God don't dissipate or are lost. أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْأَقَلُّونَ عَدَدًا, they're few in number. الْأَعْظَمُونَ قَدْرًا, but they have great stature. أَعْيَانُهُمْ مَفْقُودَةٌ وَأَمْثَالُهُمْ فِي الْقُلُوبِ مَوْجُودَةٌ. You might not see them, their essence, but their hearts are present. يحفظ الله تعالى بهم حججه حتى يدعوها نظراءهم. They preserve the proofs of God until they find places to put them amongst people like them. يزرعوها في قلوب أشباههم. They plant them in the hearts of people like them. And then باشروا روح اليقين. باشروا. They have direct contact with the spirit of certainty. فاستلانوا ما استوعر منه. So they find easy what's difficult from it. Or what the mutarafun found difficult from it, the extravagant ones. وَأَنِسُوا بِمَا اسْتَوْحَشَ مِنْهُ الْغَافِلُونَ. They're intimate with the things that the heedless people find alien. وصاحب الدنيا بأبدان أرواحهم معلقة بالمحل الأعلى. Their bodies are in the world, but their spirits are in the highest place. أولئك أولياء الله. These are the awliya. And these are the trustworthy ones. And these are God's workers in the earth. And these are the ones who invite to His religion. So that's Imam Ali saying, ثُمَّ بَكَى. And then he wept. وَشَوْقَاهُ. And then he said, would that I could just see them. Abu Na'im mentions that, وَالْخَطِيبِ in Tarikh al-Baghdad. And he said, this is all you need to know if you want to know the ulama of the akhirah. Imam al-Ghazali says, the eighth one is that they should be very concerned about cultivating yaqeen in their hearts. Remember, he talked about the yaqeen, and then I did that already. Yeah, so we went through that. Prophet ﷺ The Prophet ﷺ was asked what actions are better, and he said, "Ijtinab al-maharam," to avoid what's prohibited. وَلَا يَزَالُ فُوكَ رَطْبًا مِنْ ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ, and your tongue should always be moist with the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there are many hadiths that indicate that. اذْكُرُوا اللَّهَ حَتَّى يَقُولُوا مَجْنُونَ. Remember Allah until they say he's a madman, because it looks like you're talking to yourself. I mean, now everybody's talking to themselves with these headphones and things in their ears. And you see people now walking around, they're talking, having conversation, but then you realize they're on the phone, just walking down the street. So, and then they said, فَأَيُّ الْأَصْحَابِ خَيْرٌ, which are the best companions? قال صلى الله عليه وسلم, صَاحِبٌ إِذَا ذَكَرْتَ أَعَانَكَ, when you remember, he helps you. وَإِن نَسِيتَ ذَكَّرَكَ, and when you forget, he reminds you. وَقِيلَ وَأَيُّ الْأَصْحَابِ شَرٌ, and which ones are the worst? He said, صَاحِبٌ إِذَا نَسِيتَ لَمْ يُذَكِّرَكَ, if you forget, he doesn't remind you. وَإِن ذَكَرْتَ لَمْ يُعِنْكَ, and if you remember, he doesn't help you. وَقِيلَ أَيُّ النَّاسِ أَعْلَمُ, which people know most? He said, أَشَدُّهُمْ لِلَّهِ خَشْيَةً, the ones that have the most awe of Allah. And then they said, فَأَخْبِرْنَا بِخِيَارِنَا, tell us who are the best of us, نُجَالِسْهُمْ, so that we can sit with them. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. الَّذِينَ إِذَا رُؤُوا ذُكِرَ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى, those who when they're seen, God is remembered. قَالُوا فَأَيُّ النَّاسِ شَرٌ, which are the people that are the worst? Allahumma ghafra, oh Allah, forgive us, the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said. قَالُوا أَخْبِرْنَا يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ, oh please tell us. And he said, الْعُلَمَاءُ إِذَا فَسَدُوا, scholars if they go bad. The Prophet said the people that laugh the most in this life will cry the most in the next. The people that have the most farah in this life, he's talking about being happy about dunya. He said they'll have the greatest grief on the day of judgment. And then this is very important. He says there's 5 qualities that true scholars have. خمس من الأخلاق هي من علامات علماء الآخرة مفهومة من 5 آيات من كتاب الله. And you can derive this from 5 ayahs in the Quran. The first one is khashya, so awe. The second is khushu', which is reverence in the heart. The third is at-tawadu', which is humility. The fourth is husnul khuluq, which is beautiful character. And the fifth is itharul akhirati ala dunya. And we also call that zuhd. So it's preferring the next life over this life, and this is called detachment. Sometimes it's translated as asceticism, but detachment is better, because in our tradition, you can have dunya and still be considered zahid, as long as it's in your hand. So if you lose it, you don't fall apart. It's just mashallah. It's like this, you're in the hub. If you're in the hub, you can have dunya be on the top or on the bottom. It becomes the same. So the first one, khashya, إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاء, those who have awe of God are the ulama. The khushu', خَاشِعِينَ لِلَّهِ, also قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ. So khushu', خَاشِعِينَ لِلَّهِ لَا يَشْتَرُونَ بِآيَاتِ اللَّهِ ثَمَنًا قَلِيلًا. They don't sell the signs of God for some cheap price. تواضع واخفض جناحك لمن اتبعك من المؤمنين, that lower the wing of humbleness to those who follow you from amongst the believers. So the Prophet ﷺ was commanded to do that. He said, أمرني ربي أن أتواضع. I was commanded to be humble. حتى لا يفخر أحد على أحد, so that nobody would boast of being better than anybody. وَلَا يَبْغِيَ أَحَدٌ عَلَى أَحَدٍ, and nobody would oppress anybody. So if he's commanded to be humble, and he has every right to do men on us, but he wasn't. لَا تَمُنُّ عَلَيَّ إِسْلَامُكُمْ. أَمَّا حُسْنُ الْخُلُقِ فَبِمَا رَحْمَةٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ لِنْتَ لَهُمْ. By the mercy of your Lord, you're لِنْتَ لَهُمْ. Like you look now at these shayateen, everybody's fleeing from them. Right? These people that are claiming to be some dawla Islamiyah, everybody's running away from them. So they're not following the prophetic sunnah. If they were following the Prophet, that people would want to flock to them, go to them. But no, they're fleeing. لو كنت فظا غليظ القلب لانفضوا من حولك. If you were harsh and hard-hearted, they would flee from you. So these people they have fadada, they have harshness and ghilza. And they'll say, well, يَجِدُ فِيكُمْ غِلظَةً. Let them find harshness. That's what they use. They read the Quran. They don't understand the Quran. They don't understand the Quran. And as for zuhud, وَقَالَ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمَ وَيْلَكُمْ ثَوَابَ اللَّهِ خَيْرٌ لِمَنْ آمَنَ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا. As for those who were given knowledge, they say, watch out, the reward of God is better for those who believe and do good deeds than this dunya. So you should prefer the akhirah over dunya, the people who have knowledge. And then the Prophet ﷺ was asked, when he recited فَمَنْ يُرِدِ اللَّهُ أَنْ يَهْدِيَهُ يَشْرَحْ صَدْرَهُ لِلْإِسْلَامِ. Those who Allah wants to guide, He expands their breast to Islam. They said, what is this expansion? He said, إِنَّ النُّورَ إِذَا قُذِفَ فِي الْقَلْبِ أَنْشَرَحْ لَهُ الصَّدْرُ وَانْفَسَحْ. That when the light of Iman enters the heart, if it's thrust into the heart becomes expansive. قِيلَ فَهَلْ لِي ذَلِكَ مِنْ عَلَامَةٍ. Is there a sign of that? قال صلى الله عليه وسلم نعم. التجافي عن دار الغرور. That you move away, you don't want to be in the abode of delusion. دار الغرور. وَالْإِنَابَةُ إِلَى دَارُ الْخُلُودِ. And your inclination is toward the eternal abode. وَالْإِسْتِعْدَادُ لِلْمَوْتِ قَبْلَ نُزُولِهِ. And getting prepared for death before it comes upon you. Those are the signs. And then the 10th one, أن يكون أكثر بحثه عن علم الأعمال. He's more concerned about knowledge that relates to actions. Imam Malik didn't like theoretical knowledge. He wanted to know. You know, one of the interesting things about Malik radiallahu anhu, he memorized over 100,000 hadith. He was a hafil. His Muwatta only has 800 hadith. He spent 40 years taking it down. And when Abul Qasim, when his teacher went into his house, his student went into his house, he found all these hadiths written that Malik had collected over the years. He couldn't believe how many he'd collected, and he never related any of them. And he said, Aratullah bi'ilmika ya Abul Qasim. You wanted Allah for your knowledge. You weren't there just to show people how much you knew. They used to say, Hadithna bihadha al-hadith. He said, La uhaddithu bihi. He knew the hadith, but he said, I don't relate that. And they said, but so-and-so relates it. And he said, then go to so-and-so. He was interested in hadith that related to actions. And there are many hadiths that there's no action on them. And that's why he was very concerned about the amal of the people of Medina, because he was interested in action. How do you implement these things? And that's why the hadith, see, one of the problems amongst modern Muslims is that they read hadith and they're not trained to read hadith. The collections of hadith were written for scholars. They weren't written for common people. And many of those hadiths have no application. Many of them are not meant to be implemented. They were collected. And some of them, the ulama recognized that there were problems. They're not just problems in the sanad. Sometimes there's a problem in the matan itself, even though the sanad is sahih. But people don't know that. And that's why it's very important to learn a madhab, because the ulama, that's what they did. They looked at all these hadiths. There's only 500 hadith, about 500, that relate to fiqh. There's only a few hundred hadith that are absolutely certain at the same level of the Quran. And those were the things that Imam Malik was much more interested in. So the hadith are a source of, they can lead you astray. Ibn Wahb, one of the greatest muhaddithin in our tradition, literally, if he had a hadith, it was considered a solid hadith. Ibn Wahb said, I learned so many hadith I became confused. This is one of the greatest scholars in the history of Islam who's saying that I learned hadith, tahayyartu, walawla Malik wa Layth lahalaktu. And if it wasn't for Malik and Layth, I would have perished from the hadith. He went to Malik and Malik would say, la la, utruk hada, leave that one, khud hada, leave that one, take that one. So he clarified it for him. So now you've got common people buying Sahih al-Bukhari and getting confused. And what's it say that? Sayyidina Ali, it says he burnt Christians in Palestine. So then they say, okay, we should burn Christians in Iraq. Seriously. First of all, any hadith, I don't care what collection it's in, any hadith that puts Sayyidina Ali in a bad light is a negative hadith. I don't care what collection it's in. I don't care how sound the narration is. And these things crept into even the best of the books. It's just the nature of the beast, right? Because there was, unfortunately, a lot of fitna at that time. So any hadith that makes Sayyidina Ali look bad. You look at the claim about Hassan ibn Ali, how he was marrying everybody and divorcing. Any hadith that makes Hassan look bad, you have to question it. This is a reality. But this is for the ulama. This isn't for common people. This is for the ulama to do, the people of tadqiq, of tahqiq. So that's very important. And that's why if you want to read hadith, read Riyadh al-Salihin, because he wrote it for all of us. But you should still read it with somebody, preferably. Most of them are pretty straightforward, but they need commentary sometimes. The 40 hadith of Imam Nawawi, excellent. There's only one problematic hadith in there. Umirtu an uqatil an-nas, I was told to kill people or fight people. Muqatala, one of the great commentators of that said, Muqatala has different meanings in Arabic. One of them, it means yadfa'uhum. Like for instance, if somebody walks by in your prayer, you put your hand up. If he keeps going, فَلْيُقَاتِلْهُ. Right? That doesn't mean you try to kill him. It just means you push him back. Right? I mean, but this is a problem. People read these things and they think they know Arabic. So that's one of the aspects that's really, really dangerous about our tradition, is that you should look for knowledge that is acted upon. أما يفسدها ويشوش القلوب ويحيج الوسواس ويثير الشر. So you shouldn't go to those that will corrupt you or confuse you. Tashwish. And the hadith will confuse you. And that's why we follow what the fuqaha. They said that the muhaddithun were sayadila. The muhaddithun are pharmacists. You don't go to a pharmacist to get a cure. The faqih goes to the pharmacist. He's the tabib. So he's the one that writes the prescription. The pharmacist, all he has is the raw material, right? But the doctor tells him what to put together. In classical tradition, now, you go and it's all made by some corporation. But in those days, the pharmacist had all the raw material, and then the hakim would write the ingredients to put in, like the different herbs. Like if you go to Dr. Yang, I've been to his clinic where he has all the herbs. He knows which herbs to put in, and he writes to he's got a pharmacist, he writes the herbs, and then the pharmacist puts them together, because he's a tabib. But you don't go to the pharmacist to get them to diagnose you. And that's what, like going to muhaddithun, to say, oh, what's the ruling on this? The muhaddith doesn't know the ruling. All he knows is the hadith. The faqih is the one that knows the ruling. And the best of the fuqaha were those that were also muhaddithun, like Malik. He's the only one out of the imams that happened to be a full-fledged. All of them had hadith. Imam Shafi'i relates hadith, Abu Hanifa relates hadith, Ahmad was definitely a muhaddith. But Malik all of his hadith were sound. Ahmad related weak hadith. Malik didn't relate any weak hadith. So he was the gold standard for muhaddithun. And that's one of his imtiyazat. But all of them, كلهم ملتمس من رسول الله. كلهم من رسول الله ملتمس. All of them are taken from the Prophet ﷺ. And they're all rightly guided, all of them, the 4 imams. We should love them all equally. And we shouldn't be fanatic or prefer our imam over the other ones. From iman is to love them equally, the 4 imams. But I'm Maliki, so there's that naz'ah. And then they said about Hudayfa that, this is interesting, Hassan al-Basri, rahimahullah, his words were most like the words of the prophets, according to the Salaf. And they reflected the guidance of the Sahaba. And most of what he talked about was the states of the heart and how actions were corrupted and the wasawis of the nufus, and hidden diseases, and the shahwat of the nafs, the desires of the soul. And so it was said to him, Ya Aba Sa'id, you speak words that we don't hear from other than you. Where did you get it? And he said, from Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman. And then they said to Hudayfa, we see you speaking words that we don't hear from the other Sahaba. Where did you get it? He said, Khassani bihi Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. The Prophet, he specified me, took me out. Why? كَانَ النَّاسِ يَسَلُونَهُ عَنَ الْخَيْرِ وَكُنْتُ أَسَلُهُ عَنَ الشَّرِّ. They used to ask about good, but I asked about evil. مَخَافَةَ أَنْ يَقْعَ فِيهِ, because I was afraid that I would fall into it. وَعَلِمْتُ أَنَّ الْخَيْرَ لَا يَسْبِقُنِي. The khair was already there, right? He wouldn't. So he wanted to find out about evil. And so he said, so one time I started asking the Prophet ﷺ, and they were asking, and then I asked about evil, or what corrupts the good actions. And so when the Prophet saw that I was concerned about what corrupts actions, he gave me this knowledge. And he had the knowledge of the munafiqeen as well. In fact, Omar wouldn't pray on anybody if Hudayfa didn't show up for his janazah, because he knew that he was a hypocrite. Because Hudayfa wouldn't go to the janazah of the hypocrite. Even though he wouldn't tell people who was a munafiq, but he wouldn't pray on them. So Omar, if he saw that Hudayfa was absent in the funeral, he used to go home. And Omar asked him, am I a hypocrite? And he said, La wallah. And then after that, he said this knowledge, Imam al-Ghazali says, this concern about the stations of the heart and its states, this is the concern of the ulama of the akhirah, because the heart is what takes you to God. And then he said, but this knowledge has become strange in our time. It's mundaris. It's literally disappeared. And he said, if a scholar talks about it, that other scholars consider it strange. And he said, this is a problem, because they're only interested in argumentation and proving their points and things like that. So, and then the 11th, أن يكون اعتماده في علومه على بصيرته وإدراكه بصفاء قلبه لا على الصحف والكتب ولا على تقليد ما يسمعه من غيره. That he should be reliant on the knowledges that come from this inner eye. He's talking about the ulama of akhirah, and that are understood because of the purity of his heart, not on the books and on what's been written. And he said, and not taqleed, but about what he's heard from others. So it's important, astafti qalbik walaw aftawka an-nas, that listen to your heart even if you get fatwa from other people. So this comes from, because sometimes things are just wrong and they don't ring true. And even if a great scholar said it, it could be wrong. And so that's important to remember. So he says that. And then he talks about how the early people didn't like to write books. In fact, Ahmed ibn Hanbal was troubled by the fact that Imam Malik wrote the Muwatta initially, because they didn't write books. But later he realized the importance, and he himself wrote a book. But the point is that they were worried about that, about doing anything that hadn't been done earlier, because people would rely on these things and forget the true knowledge, which is ilm al-yaqeen. And then finally the 12th one, أن يكون شديد التوقي من محدثات الأمور, that he should beware of bid'ah. وإن اتفق عليها الجمهور, even if everybody's doing it. And he says, don't be deluded by the fact lots of people are doing it. And so he said, be sure that you're doing what came from our Prophet ﷺ. And so he said, وَعَلَمْ تَحْقِيقًا أَنَّ أَعْلَمْ أَهْلِ الزَّمَانِ وَأَقْرَبُهُمْ لِلْحَقِّ أَشْبَهُمْ بِالصَّحَابَةِ وَأَعْرَفُهُمْ بِالطَّرِيقِ السَّلَفِ. That the true and the soundest people are the ones that are most like the Sahaba and the closest to the Salaf. فَمِنْهُمْ أُخِذَ الدِّينِ. From them the knowledge was taken. And Sayyidina Ali said, خَيْرُنَا أَتْبَعُنَا لِهَذَا الدِّينِ. The best of us are those who follow the deen the best, in the best way. And that was said and he said that when somebody said, خَالَفْتَ فُلَانَ, you went against so-and-so, and he meant the previous caliphs, because he disagreed with some of their fatwas. So Imam Ali did not make taqleed of even Omar, or if he did disagree with it, because he was mujtahid mutlaq. And this is not for us, it's for the ulama. And then he said, Al-Hasan said, محدثان أحدث في الإسلام. 2 innovations came into this religion. رجل ذو رأي سوء زعم أن الجنة لمن رأى مثل رأيه. A bad man of the opinion that Jannah is only for those who think like him. A lot of people like that. وَمُتْرَفٌ يَعْبُدُ الدُّنْيَا. And extravagant people that worship this world. لَهَا يَغْضَبُ وَلَهَا يَرْضَى. Gets angry because of it and he's pleased with it. فَارْفُضُوهُمَا إِلَى النَّارِ. You know, just reject them to the fire. إِنَّ رَجُلٌ أَصْبَحْ فِي هَذِهِ الدُّنْيَا بَيْنَ مُتْرَفٍ يَدْعُوهُ إِلَى دُنْيَاهُ. So he's between an extravagant one calling him to dunya and a mubtada' calling him to his bid'ah. And then he mentions the hadith, the famous hadith of the Prophet that every muhdatha, inna kulla muhdathatin bid'ah, every innovated thing is every new thing is a bid'ah, and every bid'ah is a dalala. And obviously, you know, our ulama categorize that into 5 types of bid'ah. So that means every bid'ah that's not from the deen. Man ahdatha fi amrina hadha ma laysa minhu. Aisha relates that hadith. Imam Nawawi relates it in his 40. Whoever brings something into the religion, ma laysa minhu, that's not from it in the first place. So for instance, none of the Sahaba used a watch to determine prayer time. None of them. But determining prayer times is from the religion. So if you use a watch to do it, it's a bid'ah because they didn't do it, but it's acceptable because it's from the religion. So it's not just this blanket rejection of everything. Like the mawlid, ta'zeem of the Prophet is from the sunnah. لِتُوَقِّرُوهُ. You were told to show him tawqir. لِتُعَظِّمُوهُ. That's what it means. تُوَقِّرُوهُ وَتُعَزِّرُوهُ. So some of them, when they saw that people were losing that love of the Prophet ﷺ, they said, here's a good thing to celebrate. Because the Prophet, first of all, Isa's birthday is celebrated in the Quran, in Surah Maryam. If you read it, it's clearly talking about his birthday and how special it was. And then he talks about being a blessed day, Yawma Wulidtu, on the day I was born. Right? And then the Prophet ﷺ was asked, can I fast on Monday? And he said, Fihi wuridtu, you know, I was born on that day. In other words, it's a good day just because I was born on it. That's in Sahih Muslim. So there's a basis for it. Now some of the ulama said, well, the Salaf didn't do it, so it's better not to do it. That's fine. But to say that it's not from the religion to be happy that the Prophet was born, that is haram. Because if you're not happy he was born, you're a kafir. Right? If you're not happy he was born, you're a kafir. But how do we celebrate that? That's where the fuqaha put their opinions forward. So, you can read both fatwas, see which ones make sense. I met a man in Medina who told me that he actually was against the Mawlid, but then when he read a book written by one of the scholars in Saudi against the Mawlid that quoted heavily from the fatwas for the Mawlid, he was more convinced by the fatwas for the Mawlid than he was by the alim's argument against it. He told me that. So, and I have friends, for me, we have to live together. These are different, we have to live together. If people don't like those things, you have to respect their opinion if it's based on a scholar's opinion. You respect it. But you would hope they would respect your opinion that's based on another scholar? Because it's not my opinion. I didn't say you could celebrate Mawlid. Hasha, I would never say that. But I'm quoting Imam Suyuti that said you could do that. Or Imam al-Wazani in the Mi'yar. He gives several reasons why you can do it. I mean, it's more extensive. His fatwa is more extensive than Suyuti's. So they're the ulama. It's not me. I'm just quoting. That's naqal. That's to say, here's what the ulama said. And then you can read the other ones that say don't. That's fine. Ibn al-Hajj was of the opinion that it's better to do it throughout the year, but not to specify a date, right? Because the Prophet ﷺ was against specifying dates. So and he was a very strict Maliki scholar. One of the hadith ibn Mas'ud said, أنتم في زمان خيركم فيه المسارع في الأمور وسيأتي بعدكم زمان يكون خيرهم المتثبت والمتوقف لكثرة الشبهات. That you're in a time when it's better to hasten towards actions because they know. But he said, but the time is coming when it's better to slow down because there'll be so many doubtful matters. So it's better just to slow down and think about things, right? And Imam Malik radiallahu anhu said that the people that he knew, meaning the tabi'een, when they used to ask people, he said the scholars would never say haram or halal. Now they say haram and halal. He said the people that I knew, meaning the tabi'een, they just say makruh or mustahab. They used to say akrahu hada, la yu'jibuni hada, uhibbu hada. Because they were afraid. Allahu adhina lakum, did Allah give you permission? La tasifu bi alsinatikum al-kadhib. Don't let your tongues describe in a lying way, hada halalun wa hada haramun, litaftaru ala Allah al-kadhiba. Don't become those people. So traditionally that's what they used to do. I think we need to restore those positions now because the haram doesn't mean anything to Muslims anymore. Because everything is haram. I mean, they had a fatwa coming out of a major Muslim institution that the film Nuh was haram. But the early ulama said all films were haram. Now it's just Noah. Forget Noah. What about all the pornography in the Middle East? Maybe if he goes to Noah, he might actually get scared about the flood and make tawbah. I'm not encouraging people to go see Noah. I didn't see it. But I'm just saying, choose your fatwas, man. Seriously. If you're going to worry about Noah and you've got all these people on Google, SEX, do their little search, pornography. The highest pornography searches are coming out of Muslim countries. By the Google indices, unless they're lying, they're like, kuffar yakthibun alayna, Right? Yeah, Muslims aren't well, The least of those films I'm worried about is Nuh, seriously, or Noah. It's not even Nuh. It's just Noah. It's just a story looks like the story. He's a white guy too. Give me a break. Isn't he from Australia, that guy? Yeah. Okay, isn't it Kiwi? Yeah. So anyway, that's what he says. Now so he says these are 10 signs that you can tell the ulama of the akhirah with. And this is the akhlaq of the ulama as-salaf. And so he says, be one of two. Either have these qualities or at least admit that you don't have them and you're in trouble, right? But don't be in denial. So work to try to acquire these qualities. Yeah. وَإِيَّاكَ أَن تَكُونَ الثَّالِث فَتُلَبِّسَ عَلَى نَفْسِكَ. So you're just fooling yourself. بِأَن تُلَقِّبَ عَادَةَ الدُّنْيَا بِالدِّينِ. Right? And then you're just using the dunya for the deen. وَتُشَبِّهْ سِيرَةَ الْبَطَالِينَ بِسِيرَةَ الْعُلَمَاءِ. And you're making these imposters, these charlatans look like the real ulama ar-rasikhin. And by that, your ignorance, you become amongst those who perish. نعوذ بالله من خدع الشيطان. We seek refuge from the tricks of shaitan. فبهلك الجمهور. The vast majority of people perish because of them. ونسأل الله تعالى أن يجعلنا ممن لا تغره الحياة الدنيا ولا يغره بالله الغرور. And we ask Allah to make us from those who are not deluded by this world, and the deluder, shaitan, does not delude us. So the last chapter is a short chapter. Alhamdulillah, Sheikh Al-Ghursi actually really covered the topic pretty well. So I was pleased. I asked him to talk about something else, but he talked about that, so it worked well. But he said, he mentions a hadith, Al-Rafi'i relates it, it's marfu', but it's got definitely weakness. Al-Shaykhu fi qawmihi kan-nabi fi ummatihi. The Shaykh in his, amongst his people is like a prophet amongst his ummah. In other words, it's a source of guidance. And لَيْسَ ذَلِكَ لِكَثْرَةِ مَالِهِ. It's not because he has a lot of wealth or because he's a big personality or because of any of these things, but it's because of the fruit of his intellect. ثَمْرَةُ عَقْلِهِ. And he said, and for that reason you'll see the Turks and the Kurds and the gruff Arabs, the desert Arabs, and the rest of creation, even though they have they're uneducated people and they're a low rank in civilization at that time. I mean, obviously the Turks have great civilization, but at that time, at his time, they were actually like the Europeans at that time. I mean, the Europeans. It's interesting because the Europeans were always sexually deviant. Even when they were Christians, they had a lot of incontinence. And anybody that's ever read Chaucer will know how bad the Europeans were early on. So they're called al-mutawahisha, the wild barbarian civilizations, right? It's interesting, like the Arab, they say, the middle people, they're really civilized, and then the two extremes, they're all uncivilized. Right? Do you buy that? But that's what he says, that even though they have this low rank, they're not civilized, they still يوقرون المشايخ بالطبع. They still have this immense respect for their teachers in their nature. And it's a good quality to respect teachers. And then he says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called beneficial knowledge ruh, which is life. And he called it life. So, وَكَذَلِكَ أَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْكَ رُوحًا مِنْ أَمْرِنَا. We reveal to you a spirit from our command. So knowledge gives you life. Without knowledge, you're like a dead person. أَوَ مَنْ كَانَ مَيِّتًا or مَيْتًا فَأَحْيَيْنَاهُ وَجَعَلْنَا لَهُ نُورًا يَمْشِي بِهِ فِي النَّاسِ. Right? Haven't you seen the one who was dead and we brought him to life with knowledge? And it's a light that he walks amongst mankind with. And Allah says, يُخْرِجُهُم مِّنَ الظُّلُمَاتِ إِلَى النُّورِ. See, He uses the plural in dhulumat and the singular in nur. He takes them from the darkness of multiplicity, from the darkness of shahawats, to the light of tawheed, to the light of the integral light, the holistic light of true knowledge. And the Prophet ﷺ said, this is, Imam al-Ghazali in this section relies heavily on Dawood ibn al-Muhabbar. Dawood ibn al-Muhabbar wrote a book called Kitab al-Aql, and he quotes a lot of hadiths about the place of the intellect in Islam. And it was a very popular book. Unfortunately, as a muhaddith, he wasn't really relied upon, and so the hadith tend to be, some consider them fabricated. Ibn al-Jawzi did. Imam al-Bukhari considered him very weak. Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal was asked about him, and his فَضَحِكَ just said he kind of, laughed when he was asking, what do you think? And he just, ضَحِكَ, which means, we're not giving a lot of credence. But Abu Dawud radiyallahu anhu wathaqahu, considered him to be sound. So these are khilafat amongst the muhaddithin, and this is a problem with the hadith tradition, is that some of the muhaddithin will say he's weak, others will say he's strong, and this is why you have a lot of difference opinion about these things. Generally, the hadiths make a lot of sense, and I think that's why Imam al-Ghazali, who was not a master of hadith, and he admits that, and this has been one of the major criticisms of his book by his critics, is that he put hadiths there that weren't highly considered by scholars. But he was a brilliant man, and he certainly wouldn't quote something that he didn't think was sound in terms of its meaning. And so he quotes these hadiths. One of them, and many of these hadiths are mentioned by some of the other scholars as well, but one of them, أَوْلُ مَا خَرَقَ اللَّهُ الْعَقْلِ. The first thing that Allah created was the intellect. فَقَالَ لَهُ أَقْبِلْ, come, فَأَقْبَلَ, and it came. ثُمَّ قَالَ لَهُ أَدْبِرْ, go, and it moved back. ثُمَّ قَالَ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى وعزتي وجلالي ما خلقت خلقا أكرم علي منك بك آخذ وبك أعطي وبك أثيب وبك أعاقب. I haven't created anything more noble than you, and by you I give, by you I take, and by you I reward, and by you I punish. And so he quotes that. And then he mentions several other hadiths about the place of aql. Abu Sa'id al-Khudri mentioned لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ دِعَامَةٍ. Everything has a foundation. وَدِعَامَةُ الْمُؤْمِنِ عَقْلُهُ. And the foundation of a believer is his intelligence. وَبِقَدْرِ عَقْلِهِ تَكُونُ عِبَادَتُهُ. According to his intellect, that's going to be the foundation of his devotion. أَمَا سَمِعْتُمْ قَوْلَ الْفُجَّارِ لَوْ كُنَّا نَسْمَعُ أَوْ نَعْقِلُ مَا كُنَّا فِي أَصْحَابِ السَّعِيرِ. Allah says in the Quran, had we only listened and used our intellects, because it's one thing to hear, but if you don't understand it, it's of no benefit. So in Jahannam, فَاعْتَرَفُوا, they finally admit, لَوْ كُنَّا نَسْمَعُ أَوْ نَعْقِلُ مَا كُنَّا فِي أَصْحَابِ السَّعِيرِ. We wouldn't be here if we used our brains. And so it's the aql that keeps you out of hell. I mean, that's a clear from Surah Mulk. Umar radiallahu anhu said to Tamim ad-Dari, what is uprightness with you? He said, al-aql. And he said, it's true what you say. So there are many hadiths that he relates. He relates a hadith, again it's from Dawood ibn Muhabbir from Kitab al-Aql, that the Prophet was reported to, Aisha was reported to have asked the Prophet ﷺ, بِمَا يَتَفَاضَلُ النَّاسِ فِي الدُّنْيَا. How are people preferred one over the other in this world? بِالْعَقْلِ, with intelligence. قُلْتُ وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ, and in the Akhirah, بِالْعَقْلِ. وَقُلْتُ أَلَيْسَ إِنَّمَا يُجْزَانُ بِأَعْمَالِهِمْ. Aren't they rewarded with their actions? فقال صلى الله عليه وسلم يا عائشة هل عملوا إلا بقدر ما أعطاهم الله من العقل. Do people only act according to what God's given them from their intelligence? In other words, it's intelligence that gets you to act. When you're following your shahawat, you've capitulated. The intellect's capitulated to the shahawat. It's the intellect that should rule. And when it rules. So the ulama basically say, be careful with hadiths that have these, because the Mu'tazilite were there, and this was definitely their method. But I would recommend for all of you to read John Walbridge's book, which is The Caliphate of Reason. It's a very important book in my estimation. He's an Orientalist from the United States, but he was here in Turkey at Ithar for a little while. He knows Dr. Rajab. It's a brilliant book. I found it really to be an excellent book. What he clearly demonstrates in that book, and in some ways it was a book I would have liked to have written, because it just dovetailed so much with many of my conclusions about the crises in the Muslim world. But what he clearly shows in that book is that the Sunni intellectual tradition was a tradition completely predicated on the intellect, intelligence, the aql. And this idea that the Mu'tazilite were the rationalists and Ahl Sunnah were not is a complete fabrication. It's a modern fabrication. The Muslims, the Mu'tazilite were a necessary confrontation with Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. It was necessary for them to work out their positions. And so it was actually a very useful event. And the Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith of Hudhayfa in Sahih al-Bukhari, I have an exaggerated vasovagal response. I really do. So like loud noises just send me through the roof. If people honk behind me, I'm like, please don't honk, I'm neurotic or something. I want to get a bumper sticker. Because I literally go through the roof. It's just, I have what they call Barlow's syndrome. So when my mother was pregnant, I think she had rubella or something. And at least, I wasn't born without a brain, which sometimes happens. But the nervous system gets wired a little. So they really, I feel it in every cell of my body, those loud noises. That's why I really like quiet. I spend a lot of time in quiet, and I like peace and quiet. Allah. So where were we? What's that? Yeah, exactly. Like just now. That kind of. sometimes you need confrontation to remind you. And so that's what happened. The Mu'tazilite had a position of aql, and then the traditionalists had naql. And so what came out of that dialectic, if you want to use a Hegelian term, what came out of that dialectic was a synthesis. And so the Ahl Sunnah took positions vis-a-vis the aql. Our tradition, believe it or not, if a hadith goes against an aqli qat'i, you reject the hadith. And that's in Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. That's not the Mu'tazilite position. If there is a hadith, if you know something qat'i by the aql, and the hadith, in other words, the dalalat of our tradition, you have the wahi, and that's hadith and Quran. All the hadith is qat'i al-wurud. It's all from God. But the dalala, which means what it means, that is, some of it's qat'i, but most of it is dhanni. So it's probable. It could mean more than one thing. And so if the dalala is qat'iyya, there's no khilaf. Like, for instance, the zina, there's no khilaf about what zina means. Shurb al-khamar, there's no khilaf about what it means. None. Everybody's in agreement. Those are qat'iyatul wurud. They're absolute certain in the source, and they're certain in what it means. But then you have dhanniya. The dhanniyat al-wurud is ahad's hadith. Those are dhanniyat al-wurud. We don't know absolutely with any certainty if the Prophet actually said it. We can't say with 100% certainty. If it's in al-Bukhari, if it's in Muslim, if it's in the Muwatta, if it's in those traditions, then it's highly probable. It's like an A. You give it an A. But it's not 100% unless it's mutawatir. Mutawatir hadith has the same level as the ayah of Quran, the exact same. A mutawatir hadith has the same as the Quran. And that's why those Quraniyun, people in the Arab world now that reject, and some in other places, but in the Arab world there's this movement to say, oh, the hadith is all fabricated. We don't believe in hadith. We don't believe in the Quran. These are shayateen. Or they're atba'u shaitan. I don't know. They're just deluded or misled or something. But how did they come about? Because they read al-Bukhari and Muslim and they're not scholars, and so they got confused. And they said it's clearly the hadith is fabricated, it's all contradicting each other. And there's a whole science of tawafuq al-ahadith. The ulama looked at all these hadiths and they worked out. Some are nasikh, some are masukh, some are just not sound, or some you have to interpret it different ways. So they arrive at the same conclusion even though the outward statements. Some of them, the Sahaba said one word, and in another narration they said another word. So these are the situations. But the prayer, the 5 prayers is mutawatir. Nobody told us how to do Hajj. It's not in the Quran. If you read the Quran, it says to go on Hajj. It doesn't tell you, about the 7 times around Tawaf. It doesn't tell you how to do the Sa'i. It doesn't tell you whether you have to be in wudu or not. It doesn't tell you what to do. It doesn't, right? It's not in there. The details aren't there. The details are in the hadith. And those are mutawatir because so many people saw the Prophet ﷺ do it. The same with the Umrah. The same with the fasting. There are many things about fasting that we wouldn't know because the Quran doesn't tell you kutub alaykum al-siyam. It doesn't tell you how to do it. It doesn't tell you. Those are all the details that come from the Prophet ﷺ. So the mutawatir is very important. And then the ahad are important too, but they're of degrees. So you have the sahih, you have the hasan, you have the da'if, and then there's lots of different types of da'if. Some will take it over 30 different types of da'if. And then Ahmad ibn Hanbal, he takes da'if hadith over qiyas. Abu Hanifa takes qiyas over the ahad. So these are different, and they come up with different conclusions. It's a blessing. اختلاف أمتي رحمة. It's a weak hadith in al-Bayhaqi, but the meaning's sound. Umar ibn Abdul Aziz said the same thing. So this is important to know, that people can go astray. And even if you hear a hadith that doesn't ring true or you have a problem with it, don't say that's not a hadith, or don't just say in qaluhu faqad sadaq. At least say that. If he said it, I believe it. Right? Because don't deny prophecy. It might be a prophetic hadith, and And if it's in the Sahih, it probably is. But the possibility of fabricated or weak hadith getting in these things is still there. In al-Bukhari, it's very slight for fabrication, but it's still there. It could have happened. Because the hadith does not have the same hifz in its particulars. In the summation of it, it is a preserved tradition, undeniably. But in the particulars, it doesn't have the level of preservation that the Quran had. The Quran is 100% without any doubt from God. Whereas in the hadith, it's only the mutawatir that have that 100% certainty, and then the sahih, and then they have tartib. Sahih ala shart, muttafaq alayh ala shart al-Bukhari wa Muslim, and then you go to shart al-Bukhari, shart Muslim, like that. So there's a whole way that the ulama look at it. So that's important to know. But the aql is very important. And so we have aql and naql, right? People that don't have aql, they only have naql, right? Naql heads. Yeah, seriously. It's a disaster. You have to have aql. Imam al-Razi says in the ayah, nurun ala nur, light upon light, wahyun ala al-aql. It's the wahi coming down on the intellect. You have to have the two together because you'll go astray. And every sect has gone astray because they, like the Moroccans say, aql walu. No aql. So that's really important to know that. And he was very committed to intelligence. And hamaqa is a real problem. In fact, Marx, I don't like to quote him, but Marx considered stupidity to be one of the most important factors in human affairs. That stupidity has done more in human history to have an impact on us. I think he rated it number 4 in terms of actual world affairs. I mean, look at all our stupid rulers. Look how stupid these people are. Like, war is such a stupid thing. War it's literally it's like surgery. It's the very last thing that you do. They don't exhaust all the possibilities. They want to go to war because they're idiots. They think they're going to make money, you know. They're going to greet you with flowers in Iraq. Yeah, right. People don't like to be bombed. They don't like it. You know, they don't like to have their toes stepped on. You know, people get angry if you bump into them. And woe unto you in America if you might, by accident, run them off the road. God help you. Huh? I mean, like, you know, gun control, I don't mind having guns if you have civilized people. You know, but when people aren't very educated or they're rednecks and they hate people, they're just haters because you're off-white, you know, God. And most of them, seriously, if they go back and find their roots and things like that, they were spat on at one time, you know. The Irish are as white as the moon. Look how the British, 800 years of Anglo-Saxon persecution. The Welsh, as white as the moon. Irish slavery, just read the history about Irish slavery. They had slaves. They took Irish as slaves. The Ottomans sent all this wheat during the potato famine, right, where all these millions of Irish were starving. The Ottomans, Sultan Abdul Majid, sent wheat and to help the Irish because they heard about it. So he sent ships. The Anglo-Saxon, the British government wouldn't allow the wheat through because they didn't want to make the English government look bad because the Turks were helping and they weren't. They let the Irish die. I mean, all you have to do is read, if you want a good Anglo-Irish take on the English attitude towards the Irish, read Jonathan Swift's A Modest Proposal, right? It's a great essay. And, you know, it's tongue-in-cheek, but he was basically articulating the sentiment of those people. Let's just bake their kids, bake them, you know, make them into food, right? So that's what happened. I mean, that's, you know, my ancestors fled Catholic persecution in Scotland, and they fled English persecution in Ireland to America. And the Irish, and then they got to America. My great grandfather got to Philadelphia, and he met the Irish riots. They went and burnt down all their churches and the Protestants because they're from Anglo-Saxon. So the Irish, there's a book you can read, When the Irish Became White, which is about how the Irish got integrated into American society, because at first they were treated like African Americans or Native Americans. That's why so many blacks have Irish blood. Imam Zayd's half Irish, right? Because Irish couldn't marry Anglo-Saxon women in America, right? So there's sick people, just racist people that have these diseases. Racism is a sickness, you know? And it's more tribalism, because the color is not so much the issue. Trust me, Turks are Turks, and many Turks are as white as the Lai. Lai? Did I say that right? No, I. How do you say moon? I? Yeah. How do you say white? White. Beyaz? Beyaz. Yeah, the Beyab. The Arabs must have got it from Turkish. Beyaz ay. Huh? Turks are white as the moon, but they're still Turks as far as Europeans are concerned. They're Asiatics. So it's not about color. We have to get out of this whole color thing. This is about tribe and socioeconomics. It's about money, and it's about this idea of blood purity, which is a disease. Some of the Arabs have that disease. Wallahi, it's a disease in our community. Some South Asians have that disease. They think that, Baluchis are below them, right? They think that Pathans are below them, right? And then you go to India and you'll find that you've got people from different parts of India. I mean, they look down on people from Kerala. Kerala, sweetest people in India. Really. Malayalam. They speak Malayalam. The Arabs say Malayu'lam. Kerala, nice people. Wallahi, I lived in the Emirates. All the Kerala people that were there, a lot of people from Kerala, they were the sweetest people. I was amazed at the Kerala people. They're just really humble people. I find Bengalis very humble people. Wallahi, people from Bangladesh, they're very humble people. 500 years ago, Bangladesh had one of the highest per capita incomes in the world. It was one of the most civilized countries on the planet. The Wheel of Fortune. Bangladesh. Dhaka was considered, when the first British explorers got there in the 16th century, they could not believe how advanced Dhaka was. They couldn't believe it. You know, they had a great tradition, highly civilized people. So, you look at people, they've fallen on hard times, you have to have compassion for them. Africans, the same. You look at African Americans, the fact they're still standing after 500 years is a miracle when you look at the history of what they went through. If you study Mexican history, you will weep tears of blood. Tears of blood. I'm telling you. If you read Mexican history and you look at how the Spanish treated them, they had 10 racial classifications in Mexico. 10 racial classifications. Unbelievable. Rape was a standard practice of the conquistadores. It was a standard practice. So you got the mestizos that were mixed Spanish and Indian blood. If you study Native American history, you will weep tears of blood. If you study Jewish history, you'll weep tears of blood. They used to strip them naked and make them run through the villages in Europe and spit on them and throw stones at them. Utter humiliation and degradation. And then look at what these Nazis did with them. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. There's been so much human suffering on this planet. And we have to have more compassion for each other. Really, everybody suffered. Everybody has suffered on this planet, except the English. But everybody else has suffered. Really, you study the history and you will see people have suffered immensely. Everybody has suffered. So we have to have more compassion for people. Really, that's what our religion is about. It's about teaching us, ta'awunu 'ala al-birri wa taqwa. That was revealed about the mushrikeen. It wasn't about Muslims working together. It was about working with good. The world is divided between people that are mostly good but have some bad, and people that are mostly bad that have some good. That's the classification. And then the next classification, the Abrahamic peoples and the other peoples. That's a classification, because the Semitic truths are the closest, right? These ancient Aryan mythologies and the Asiatic traditions, I believe they're revealed traditions. They definitely have truth in them. There are clear indications that many of these traditions were revelations from God. They have different ways of looking at God and the world and everything, but they have truth in them. Confucius, if you study the Analects of Confucius, it sounds just like hadith. Wallahi, you read the Analects and you'll think, are these hadith? It sounds just like hadith. Because he was a great teacher. I don't know if he was a prophet. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. But he was definitely in the tradition of the prophets. Teaching people how to be human. Teaching them how to treat each other. Teaching them how to have filial piety. How to take care of their parents. How to honor those who had benefited society. خَيْرُكُمْ أَنْفَعُكُمْ لِعِيَالِ اللَّهِ. The best of you are those who help Allah's dependents the most. Those are the best of us. So all of this madness that we're in today, we have to go back to using our intelligence again. Really, we have so much stupidity in the world. A lot of stupidity. People just behaving with utter stupidity. And so the very last section that he mentions here is about the nature of the intellect. What is it? And so I'm going to quickly go through this. He said there's basic 4 meanings to the intellect. And he said all the differences about intellect come from this difference of understanding about its nature. And he said the first is that the intellect is the word that we use to distinguish the human from other animals. That we have this thing called the aql. So we are aql. And so it's the rational component. This is what intellect is. It's rationality. It's intelligence. Rationality means that there's reasons why you do things. And humans are rational. Even in their irrationality, there's rationality. Unless it's madness. And there's no intellect. Somebody just kills somebody because he's mad or whatever. That's madness. But if you eat a cheesecake, you have a reason for doing it because you want pleasure. That's a reason. It might not be the best reason, but there's a rational reason why you're doing it. If I eat it, I'm going to feel good. If I feel good, I'm going to be happy. I want to be happy, therefore I should eat it. Right? I mean, this is a syllogism. And we're always doing this. Always. And then the next one is that the second meaning of the intellect is the ability to distinguish between three things. What's wajib, what's mumkin, and what's mustahil. And these 3, this is the essence. Necessary, contingent, or possible, or conceivable. And this is also called possible. And then impossible. So these 3, this is what the intellect does. And it does it through what's called propositions. And propositions they're either true or false. They're either true or false. And they're either affirmations or negations. So a proposition, there is a God. That's a proposition. It's either true or false. The intellect determines what its position on it is. It's either necessary that there is a God, it's either conceivable that there is a God, or it's inconceivable that there is a God. So it's going to fall into one of these categories, and then the intellect, it basically knows intuitively certain things are impossible. For instance, it is impossible for me to fly. Like, I cannot fly. I know that. My intellect tells me that. It's impossible for me to believe that this is taller than I am. It's impossible. The intellect just knows that. And if I said, isn't it interesting how this is taller than I am? You would say that you're mad. It's not taller than you are, right? Well, I could say by perspective, if you put it over there and then you put me over there, right? And then. So that's what the intellect does. It knows these three things, and children know these things. They know them intuitively. So this is the foundation of the aql, is its ability to determine what's possible, what's necessary, and what's impossible, or conceivable and inconceivable. So by thinking, the intellect, if it's sound, will conclude that it is impossible for something to come out of nothing. It's impossible. Therefore, this, people say, is there a God? Wrong question. Muslims never ask that question, is there a God? The question is always, does the world have a creator? That's the question. Not, is there a God? Because we can't know that, right? We cannot know that. If there was no creation, if we never existed, we couldn't know whether there was a God or not. But because we're in a world and we have intellects, we can reflect and come to the conclusion, this world must have had a creator. And that creator must necessarily exist because I know this only contingently exists. It's possible. There could be a world or there couldn't be a world. That's possible because we know it had a beginning. And therefore, because we know it had a beginning, whether or not it existed or not, that was up to whoever made it. So it has a conceivable existence, not a necessary. The world is not necessarily existent. But because we're in the world, there are certain things that are necessary about being in the world. For instance, it is wajib that I occupy space. I cannot exist without occupying space. You see, so now you move to there's wajib in the contingent, right? It's necessary that I need air, wajib. I cannot live without air. It's not conceivable to exist without air. I'm an air being. I need air, right? I'm aquatic. I can go into water, but only for short periods of time. So we have one of the most fascinating things about the human being, even though in traditional medicine we are made up of the four elements in traditional medicine: earth, air, fire, and water. Fire is the heat, the caloric content that we're created. We have fire in us. And then there's spiritual fire also. But Allah has made us, we exist in earth, right? We walk on earth, we sleep on earth, all these things. We wear earth. This is all cotton. It's from the earth. We breathe air, right? We have to drink water. Bismillah. But the one thing that He has made that we cannot take is the fire. It's amazing. We cannot take the fire. We can't touch it. We can't walk in it. We can't swim in it. Water we can swim in. So He made, of all these elements, the one element that He made us fear and be afraid of was fire. To teach us, when He told us, I have a fire, you don't want to go into it. Because you know what the dunya fire is like, this is much worse, right? So that's the aql, understanding those. So that's the second type of aql. It's the understanding or the first principles. The third are the knowledges that we benefit through experimentation, through living in the world. The aql acquires knowledge. This is muktasab. It's knowledge that's acquired from time, learning grammar, learning how to build things, learning engineering, learning mathematics. We need the second type of intellect to learn those things, but it's through the third type of intellect that we actually learn them. And then finally, the fourth is this quwwah that's inherent in us that enables us to understand the end results of things. We understand the dangers inherent in things or the benefits inherent. So it's the intellect that enables us to distinguish between what's beneficial and what's harmful. So he said the first one is the root, rationality, the reason. It's the root, it's the sink or the manba. The second one is the fara', right? It's the branch that comes out of that root, which is the ability to understand. The third is the branch of the first and the second. So it's science that comes from understanding and from learning. And then the fourth one is the wisdom. It's the fruit of all of them. And this is the thing that we most should desire, is that fourth one, which is how we benefit from things. And so he says, لَإِن سَأَلْتُمْ مَنْ خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ or مَنْ خَلَقَهُمْ لَيَقُولُنَّ Allah. If you ask them who created them, they will say Allah. معناه, Imam al-Ghazali, look at his deep understanding. إِنْ اعْتَبَرْتَ أَحْوَالَهُم. If you reflect on their states, شَهِدَتْ بِذَلِكَ نُفُوسُهُم وَبُوَاطِنُهُم. Their internal reality testifies to that truth, even if they're atheists denying it. So they might not say, nobody created me, but lisan al-hal is what's saying it. If you ask them who created you, lisan al-hal says Allah. Even if they say nothing. It's the lisan al-hal that if you look, we're makhluq. We call ourselves a creation. Every creation demands, by necessity, a creator. And so what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? That in the fitrah, there is this knowledge. And so how do we bring that knowledge out? Tadhkir, wa dhikr. Remind them of what they already know. They have a Lord. Their Lord created them. They didn't come out of nothing. You have to remind people. Wa dhikr. فَهَلْ مِن مُدَّكِرٍ. Is there somebody who will be reminded of this, right? وَلِيَتَذَكَّرَ أُولَى الْأَلْبَابِ. So that they recollect the people that have core to their being. وَاذْكُرُوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ وَمِيثَاقَهُ الَّذِي وَاثَقَكُمْ بِهِ. And remember, recollect the blessing of Allah that you have. And this covenant that He made with you in the unseen world. أَلَسْتُ بِرَبِّكُمْ. We were there in the divine presence. And Allah said, He said to our souls, not with a voice, He said to our souls, am I not your Lord? And our souls said, Bala shahidna. We testify. We need reminders of that. We were there. We remember. It's a recollection. Anamnesis. We come into the world and we forget. Because the world is a place that makes people forget. Right? Al-insan sumya insanan liannu yansa. We're called insan because we forget. So we need reminders. And that's what the intellect is there for. It's to remember, to recollect. That's why memory is such an important component to the intellect. But we have spiritual Alzheimer's disease today. We have spiritual Alzheimer's disease. Zamheimer, like they say in Egypt. Zamheimer. ده عنده زمهايمر ما بيذكر. لكن في الحاجة ليذكر. بقول لك ليه؟ لأنه في يوم القيامة ده مصيبة. We should remember. Alhamdulillah. MashaAllah. Alhamdulillah. So then he just says that وَمَنْ كَانَ فِي هَذِهِ أَعْمَى فَهُوَ فِي الْآخِرَةِ أَعْمَى وَأَضَلُّ سَبِيلًا. If you're blind in this world, you're going to be blind in the next. Blind inside here, right? Because فَإِنَّهَا لَا تَعْمَى الْأَبْصَارُ وَلَكِنْ تَعْمَى الْقُلُوبُ. It's the hearts that go blind that are in our breasts, الَّتِي فِي الصُّدُورِ. So he says finally, مَنْ لَمْ تَكُنْ بَصِيرَتُهُ الْبَاطِنَةُ ثَاقِبَةً. If you don't have a piercing inner eye, لَمْ يَعْلَقْ بِهِ مِنَ الدِّينِ إِلَّا قُشُورُهُ. Nothing will adhere to you from this religion except the shells of the religion. وَأَمْثِلَتُهُ دُونَ لُبَابِهِ. Not the essence. وَحَقَائِقِهِ. And its realities. فَهَذِي أَقْسَامُ يَنْطَرِقُ اسْمُ الْعَقْلِ عَلَيْهِ. These are the categories of the intellect. And in conclusion, he gives the secrets of why people have different levels of intelligence. And he said that, this is basically what he's saying is that there's, as for the fourth one, which is the intellect that tells you what's good and what's bad, he said it depends on the quwwah of how strong that intellect is in you. That's what enables you to suppress your negative desires, those things that are going to be harmful for you. And he said, you can see people differ in this ability. And he said, even in one person, there's differences in relation to other things. He said, so for instance, look at a young person. He said, it's very difficult for a youth to avoid sexual indiscretions if he has the opportunity for it. He's saying just because his shabab, the fire is very strong, his appetites are very strong, and his intellect isn't very developed. That's why you have to protect them from these things. That's why modern society is so evil, because it puts them all together and it thinks, oh, this is normal. No, it's crazy to have a co-ed high school is madness. It's madness to have a co-ed high school. I'm totally against co-ed high schools. It's crazy to put a 15-year-old youth surrounded by, first of all, the girls suffer because they don't learn as well, and they've proven this. There are many studies that have proven this. But it's insane because it's very difficult. People fall in love, they're attracted at that age. Ghulman, ghulma is lust, and that's what a ghulam is. When you enter into puberty, there's a lot of ghulma, there's a lot of lust. And so that's just human nature, it's very strong. So he's saying that. And he says, whereas, for instance, if you look, as he gets older, he can conquer that. As he gets into his later 20s, 30s, it's easier to conquer that. But in the teens, it's very difficult. And then he said, but if you look at riyah and riyasa, leadership and riyah, he said, that's actually less when you're young, and it increases as you get older. So it's the opposite. وَقَدْ يَكُونْ سَبَبُ التَّفَاوُتِ فِي الْعِلْمِ. And sometimes it means it's just knowledge, that the more knowledge you have, the stronger you are. He says, for instance, that a doctor will protect himself from food that's harmful because he has more knowledge about it. Dr. Aisha was telling me that in a place that she worked, a lot of the cardiac physicians or the surgeons that do they're vegans. Because they're working all the time clearing out people's arteries, and they know the source of the arteries, it's modern diets, and they know that that diets that are very low on animal fats and products and dairy and things like that have far less heart disease. They're not going to get heart disease. We know that. So the doctor will avoid that, because that's why if you see a doctor smoking, they're mad. They haven't learned anything from their. In fact, one of the most beautiful things I ever heard from a great man was Robert Maynard Hutchins, who was truly a great man. He was the youngest dean at University of Chicago, 29 years old. He was dean of the president of the college. But at the end of his life, they honored him at this big banquet, and he accomplished many things in his life. And in his speech, and he was noted for self-deprecating humor, but in his speech he said, I've listened to all these people before me saying what a great man I am, but I have to ask the question, if I'm such a great man, why have I never been able to give up smoking? And that is, even though it's humorous and he was obviously self-deprecating humor and things, but there's a lot of truth in that question. There's a lot of truth in that question. Because if you can't conquer yourself and your nafs and your appetites that you know are harmful for you, then you're sorely lacking in accomplishment. And that's a big difference. I'm winding down, but this is the last session that we're going to do on this, so I'm almost done. So he says that the more knowledge you have, the more that you will guard yourself against these things, and the less knowledge, the less. And he said this is why, that very knowledgeable people have control over themselves. And so he said there's a tafawut in this ability. There's discrepancies between those abilities. And so as the natural disposition of your intellect is strengthened, the more that you will be able to do these things and conquer yourself. And he says, as for the third, so he did the fourth first. And then the third, he says, these are the experimental knowledges, the knowledges that come. He said, we can clearly see the difference in people with these. Some people just get mathematics, some people don't. Some people learn grammar very quickly, some people have a hard time. He said that these are intellectual gifts that people vary in one another. And so he said that these begin to emerge at about the age of 7, and they will continue to increase slowly. and they reach their perfection at 40. So that you're at the height of your intellectual prowess at about 40. And then he said, it's like subh, when the light first comes, and as the day goes, it gets to the height, and then the light is the strongest, and then it begins to diminish. He said it's the same. And he said, whoever thinks the Prophet's intellect is like the intellect of other people, he said he's worse than anybody. Because the Prophet ﷺ, there wouldn't be any difference of intellects if it wasn't for him, because his intellect is the greatest of all intellects. And Abu Nu'aym in his Hilyah, he said that Wahab ibn Munabbih said, I read 71 books, and I found in all of them أن الله لم يعطي جميع الناس من بدء الدنيا إلى انقضائها من العقل في جنب عقل محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. That from the beginning of time until the end of time, Allah did not give all of those intelligence what He gave, collectively what He gave to the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم. So the Prophet has the greatest intellect ever. And أرجح الناس عقلا وأفضلهم رأيا. And so this is the light of the intellect. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, "Inna ruh al-Qudus nafatha fi ru'i or rawi, ahbib man ahbabta fa innaka mufariquhu, wa ish ma shi'ta fa innaka mayyit, wa'mal ma shi'ta fa innaka majziyun bih." The Prophet ﷺ was given ilham, and he spoke about it by saying that the Holy Spirit, ruh al-Qudus, which according to Moses, Jibreel alayhi salam, and it's not the Christian Holy Spirit, but it's because they confused that. But it's Ruh al-Qudus is a ruh, right? The soul that's holy, sacred. Nafatha fi ru'i. He breathed into my ruh is your heart, your qalb or your dhihin or your aql. Ahbib man ahbabta. Love whomever you please, but know that you have to leave them. You have to leave your beloved. وَعِشْ مَا شِئْتَ فَإِنَّكَ مَيِّتٌ. And live as long as you can, but know that you will die. وَأْمَلْ مَا شِئْتَ. And do what you want, فَإِنَّكَ مَجْزِيٌ بِهِ. But know that you will be recompensed for it. Good for good and bad for bad. So what he says is this namat is the Prophet ﷺ, this said that this is different from wahi, sarih. This is something different from wahi. He didn't say awha ilayya. He said nafatha fi ru'i. And the dhihin, the mind, my consciousness, it was breathed into my consciousness, this meaning. And he said that this isn't hearing with the ear. This is something from the angel that comes, and it's called nafath fi ru'. And so he said that the degrees of wahi are different. And he said, but this book is not about that, so I won't go into that. You know, he does that a lot. He tempts you with these things. فَلَا تُظُنَّنَّ أَنَّ مَعْرِفَةَ دَارِجَةِ الْوَحْيِ تَسْتَدْعِي مَنْصِبَ الْوَحْيِ. Don't think that knowing about wahi means that you have wahi. No. He said you can have a sick person that knows medicine, but he's not a tabib. And you can have people having different degrees of health. And like that, you can have people that know about nubuwwah or wilaya, but they're not a prophet or a wali. And then he said also about naql, that there's a difference of opinion. على تفاوت العقل من جهة النقل. So you can tell also that there's a difference of intellect in relation to naql, because people understand different things from it, right? So that's important. So finally he ends this. فإن قلت فما بال أقوام من المتصوفة يذمون العقل والمعقول. So what's up with all these Sufis who have bad things to say about intellect and intelligence? He said, فَاعْلَمْ أَنَّ السَّبَبْ فِيهِ أَنَّ النَّاسِ نَقَلُوا اسم العقل والمعقول إلى المجادلة. This is because some people call argumentation and disputation from the aql and the ma'qul. So what they're rejecting is munadarat, mujadarat, and munaqadat wal ilzamat. They're also rejecting dialectical theology, because a lot of the Sufis were against dialectical theology. فَلَمْ يَقْدِرُوا عَلَى أَنْ يُقَرِّرُوا عِنْدَهُم أَنَّكُمْ أَخْطَأْتُمْ فِي التَّسْمِيَةِ. Instead of saying you made a mistake in naming it, instead they just condemn the name. But they're not talking about that, because nobody can condemn the light of the inner eye, which is only known we don't know Allah and we don't know the messengers and their truth except by it. So how could you in any way disparage it? فَبِمَا عُلِمَ صِحَّةُ الشَّرْعِ. How did you know the truth of revelation except by the intellect? فَإِنْ عُلِمَ بِالْعَقْلِ الْمَذْمُومَ الَّذِي يُوثَقُ بِهِ فَيَكُونَ الشَّرْعُ أَيْضًا مَذْمُومًا. So if you say that this blameworthy intellect is what knows the sharia, then we'd have to say the sharia is blameworthy, and that's not impossible. So ولا يلتفت إلى من يقول إنه يدرك بعين اليقين ونور الإيمان لا بالعقل. And don't listen to anybody that says these things are known with عين اليقين or نور الإيمان, not with the intellect. فإن نريد بالعقل ما يريده بعين اليقين ونور الإيمان. Because when we talk about the intellect, this is what we're talking about, عين اليقين and نور الإيمان. We're talking about the light of faith. This is true intellect. So he's giving a true definition of intelligence. وهي الصفة الباطنة التي تميز بها الآدمي عن البهائم. This is what distinguishes us from the animals. This is what, through it, we realize the reality of affairs. And all of these problems, أكثر هذه التخبيطات إنما ثارت من جهل أقوام طلبوا الحقائق من الألفاظ وتخبطوا لتخبط اصطلاحات الناس في الألفاظ. And so a lot of people, they went astray, they got lost because of these misunderstandings of what words mean. And so he says, وَهَذَا الْقَدْرُ كَافٍ فِي بَيَانِ الْعَقْلِ وَاللَّهُ أَعْلَمُ بِالصَّوَابِ. Beautiful. Allah knows best. تَمَّ كِتَابُ الْعِلْمِ. The book of knowledge is complete. So that's his book of knowledge. Jazallahu khairan. May Allah reward him. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah, give us the ability to benefit from his knowledge. Inshallah, give us a portion of what he gave Imam al-Ghazali. Inshallah, may Allah forgive us all of our sins. Anything that we've said that was a mistake, may Allah erase it from our suhuf. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah, protect us from any zallat, from anything that we said that had bad adab towards Allah or towards his messenger. May Allah forgive us. May Allah, inshallah, raise us in the company of people like Imam al-Ghazali, and at the head is our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah, make him pleased and joyful when he sees us on Yawm al-Qiyamah. May, inshallah, he be happy to give us a drink that we'll never have thirst after it from his hawd. May he smile when he sees our faces. May he be pleased with us and content with us. And may he take us by his hand, his blessed hand, into paradise. And may we be with him and with the saints and with the salihin and the siddiqeen and the shuhada, all these great people that went before us. May we have the pleasure of their company in paradise. May Allah give us the pleasure of their company in paradise. May He raise us with them. May He elevate us by their knowledges. May He restore these knowledges to our people and our faith. And may He remove from us any rancor in our hearts towards any of them. May He make all of them beloved to us, and may He make us beloved to them, and may He make us beloved to our Prophet ﷺ. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah, to make our sins the sins of those He loves, and not make our good deeds the good deeds of those He loathes. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah, to protect us from our wrong actions and guide us, inshallah, on this path. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless all the people that facilitated this. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless the minister. May He, inshallah, protect them, give them the right guidance, inshallah, to do what's best for this country and for the Muslims and for humanity. May Allah protect this country from any evil inside and outside. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect them from any plots against them. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give them security and keep them in security. May He bless this beautiful city of Kunya, bless all the people of Kunya. May, inshallah, give us love of its people and give its people love of us. May He bless Ali, who's here, the Mudir. May He give him tawfiq, inshallah, in the Bilim Markazi. Inshallah, may He protect this Markaz, make it a light and a manara of learning. May He inspire the children that visit this place, inshallah, to be people that seek knowledge in their lives and to restore knowledge to the centrality of our faith. Ya Allah, we ask You, inshallah, to bless all the people that have fed us and clothed us and put us in these dorms. May He bless all of them, the gardeners who planted the grass. May He bless them and bless their spouses and their children and their houses. May He bless these bus drivers who have taken us back and forth. May He bless all of them and give them lights and give them faith and give them nur. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect all of us. Ya Allah, we ask you to protect all the people in this gathering. We ask you to give us the light of faith, and all the people that have watched, inshallah, may He benefit them from all this knowledge. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah, to open our hearts to the nur al-ilm. We ask Allah, Allahumma alimna ma yanfa'ana. We ask you to give us beneficial knowledge and don't give us harmful knowledge. We ask you to protect us from wasting our time. We ask you to protect us from wasting our time. We ask you to protect us from wasting our time. Protect us from the fitan of the internet and all these fitan that are out there. We ask you to restore sanity to our Muslim brothers and sisters wherever they are. We ask you to give ease and peace to the people of Palestine. Give them, inshallah, security and protect them. We ask you to protect them from any evil plotted against them. We ask you to bless the people in Syria and restore security to that place and put the best people over them, Ya Allah. We ask you to restore in Egypt and Libya, restore those countries to security, Ya Allah. We ask you to, inshallah, give them openings and protect all of the Muslim countries. We ask you to protect Yemen, inshallah, and give them security, and protect the Gulf states and give them security, guide them to the right path. We ask you to guide those people that are put in power over us, Ya Allah. Allahumma saddid khutahim, wafiqhum lima tuhibbu wa tarda. Allahumma a'idhum ila dinihim wa ta'atika ya arhamar rahimin. Wa la tusaddat alayna bi dhanubina man la yakhafuka wa la yarhamuna ya arhamar rahimin. Allahumma basirna, iftah alayna basairana li muraqabatika wa mushahadatika ya Allah. Allahumma wafiqna lima tuhibbu wa tarda. Anta arhamar rahimin. Allahumma inna qasarna fi haqqika wa fi haqqi dinika wa fi haqqi nabiyyika. Allahumma إن أمة محمد تشتكي في كل مكان. اللهم إن أمة محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم تشتكي في كل مكان. اللهم بعدنا عن الشكوى. اللهم ارزقنا الشكر يا الله. اللهم ارزقنا الشكر يا الله. اللهم نشكرك على ما أنعمت علينا من حياة ومن عقل ومن علم ومن سدد ومن إيمان. اللهم قوي إيماننا. اللهم هون علينا مصائب الدنيا بيقين صادق من قلوبنا يا أرحم الراحمين. أنت أرحم الراحمين يا الله. اللهم إنك قلت وقولك الحق. اللهم إنك قلت وقولك الحق يا الله. اللهم إنك قلت وقولك الحق واصبروا صبرا جميلا. اللهم أصبرنا. اللهم أمرتنا بالصبر فاصبرنا يا الله. اللهم صبرنا يا الله. اللهم صبرنا. اللهم اجعلنا من المصابرين ومن المرابطين ومن المراقبين. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك يا الله. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا وحبيبنا محمد. اللهم بارك في القائمين على الرحلة. اللهم بارك في دكتورة عائشة وفي أهلها وفي أولادها وفي في 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 طاقمها يا الله. اللهم بارك فيهم جميعا يا الله. اللهم بارك فيهم جميعا. اللهم وفقهم لما تحب وترضى. أنت أرحم الراحمين. اللهم بارك في أولادنا وفي ذريتنا وفي أزواجنا وفي أحبابنا. اللهم ردنا إلى أوطاننا مردا جميلا. اللهم اجعلنا سالمين غانمين. اللهم ردنا إلى أوطاننا ونرى أهالينا في صحة وعافية وفرح يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم يا الله اجعل رحلتنا إلى إسطنبول رحلة سالمة من العيوب ومن النقص ومن الرياء والسمعة ومن الفساد. اللهم بعدنا عن هذه الأشياء يا الله. اللهم سبحانك إنك قلت وقولك الحق يا الله. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد صلاة تنجينا بها من جميع الأهوال والآفات وتقضي لنا بها جميع الحاجات وتطهرنا بها من جميع السيئات وترفعنا بها عندك على درجات وتبلغنا بها أقصى الغايات من جميع الخيرات في الحياة وبعد الممات وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.